What's up, guys? Just a gaming while mining test for everyone today. I was curious about Warzone and if it was possible, and I wanted to share how I did it and what settings I'm using. So you got to make compromises, but just to give you the rough details, the 6700 XT gets around 46 mAh at 150-ish watts or 150 or higher watts if you're not going for low temps and power consumption. If you're optimizing for efficiency, it gets around 44 mAh at 115 watts, which is much better, and that's without gaming. Then if you want to game while doing it, you get around 41 mAh, so that's with the optimized settings that I'm running. So I'm on an ultra-wide monitor, and what I did was I pretty much just had to turn everything to minimum and the render resolution down to 720p because my base resolution is 3440 by 1440. So if you're on 1080p, going down to 720p might not be as jarring. You won't have to go all the way to 50% render scale. You might be able to be a bit higher. But basically, yeah, that's all you got to do. You got to minimize your VRAM usage and bandwidth usage. And the way to do that is just to lower all settings to bare minimum and reduce the resolution. And then the important part that a lot of other videos didn't really go into much detail with is setting an FPS cap. An FPS cap is crucial because if you run it uncapped, the GPU basically tries to run max frames all the time, and that's going to hurt your hash rate and your FPS consistency because obviously other resources of the GPU are going towards mining. So the main reason I did this video is just because I was curious about it myself, and I knew I wasn't the only one that wanted to try gaming while mining, and some of the videos online basically push you away from the idea that it's possible to do it smoothly, and they might give the wrong impression, at least for a 2021 system with the Ryzen 5 3600. And I've also tested this on the lower VRAM RX 5700, and I was able to get the same results, like playable gameplay. You know, it's not perfect. It looks very aliased in real life. Like, you can't see it that well on the camera. You can see a little bit of the aliasing. But basically, yeah, you have to make that compromise. But I was able to get the performance fairly smooth. So this is in a plunder match in Warzone. And just to show you the mining tool going at the same time, it's running at 40.89 mAh, down from 44. So basically a 3 to 4 mega hash hit, and I get something to do while I'm, you know, if you're bored, if you don't have multiple PCs, and you just want to get some gaming on, but you don't want to lose all your profitability. Say, imagine if the profit rate is really high, 4 mega hash isn't going to hurt, but you know, if you're under the impression that you'll lose half your hash rate, that's why most people don't even bother attempting it, because they're thinking it's going to be stuttery and not playable. So I had to cap the FPS down at 30. That's like basically console level, but because the game is optimized for consoles as well, or it runs on consoles, I should say, the experience isn't that bad combined with all the lowered settings to get the frame rate consistency higher. So as you can see, the 1% and average are 30. It's holding really close to what I've set it to. And when you get in combat, there might be like the odd hitch. It might be a little bit higher input latency due to the lower frame rate, like if you're used to playing at high frame rates on PC. But in terms of just being able to play, if you're not too competitive, you can still enjoy it. You know, like you can do stuff. You can when you do actions, when you're turning the mouse, it's not laggy. It doesn't feel like it's got high input latency. It's just not as good as running 100 FPS. That's all. So I'm going to share this gameplay. There's some enemies not far from me. So just forgive my bad. I have performance anxiety, so when I'm trying to talk and play at the same time, I tend to play much worse. But I'm pretty much just going to show you this, and we might also test Path of Exile, and I'll show you my GPU settings. Wait. Where was that? Thank you. You can see there, I was able to get 3 kills. These enemies are probably right behind me. I want to get out of here. But yeah, you can see I can actually play. I'm getting kills. I'm coming third in plunder, and I'm running at 720p render scale. So obviously, yeah, you have to adjust for whatever resolution and monitor you're running. You might find you can run a slightly higher render scale or a slightly lower render scale might be necessary. And the reason I say render scale is because if you go to full screen, I'm in borderless mode. If you go to full screen mode in Warzone to get like a low base resolution, like you want to set it to 800 by 600, for example, your entire UI will be shrunk and adjusted to that resolution, and it makes everything look horrible. Like your health, your money, your username in the bottom left becomes basically unreadable at too low of a resolution. And yeah, that's why you use render scale and your UI does not get scaled down. You get a nice UI. And that's part of what makes the experience playable. If you like, there's a compromise to having aliasing and lowered settings and lower texture quality, but it's like a saving grace of it when you can still have a nice looking UI. You can see your latency, your frame rate in the top left, and you know the menus look fine. But that's full screen borderless with resolution scaling just turned down to 50%. So you can give it a go. I mean, if you're on a smaller monitor, it probably won't be as bad. I'm on ultra wide 34-inch, so if I run like 800 by 600 native in the game settings with full screen, it really looks bad because the pixels are all it gets super pixelated. Is that a chest? Yeah, it is. And one other thing is that enemies can be fairly hard to spot. Like snipers in particular. I don't see snipers as easily. You can still see the glint of the scopes at this at these settings, but compared to like obviously 1440p ultra wide, everything is much clearer and crisper. So, you know, but I mean, it's playable. I can enjoy it. It's something to do. This guy coming after me or what? Could have sworn he was coming after me. Maybe he doesn't know where I am. Anyway, I'll just share this gameplay and you can just see how smooth it is. Like, the only time you'll really get bad stutter is if you're traveling in a vehicle through certain areas of the map. There's like a texture streaming transition loading the new area, loading the next area that you're traveling to. Like it preloads the map as you traverse through it. You might get some odd hitching there. And wait, where's this guy? I swear I heard him. You might get some hitching there. These guys are coming for me, hey. It's hard to see. I think there was another one to the left. Nope. Go in the barrels. He was on 40 ms. I'm on 87. It's kind of hard. And I have no team. And the other hitching is, if you know how mining works, when there's a DAG rebuild, you might get like a slight pause as the DAG's being built, but DAGs are built pretty quick now. So it's not a deal breaker. It's just to have something to do, because I found myself, before I tested it and got it working, I found myself thinking, according to a few videos online, that it's going to be a stuttery mess, because that's how they start off their videos. They don't show the gameplay smooth. And then they tweak it further into the video, and then you go, oh, okay, so it can be smoothed out. But they also don't go into the FPS caps, and they don't necessarily test the latest titles. So that's what this test is for, so you can just see it. And sorry, I'm back down to 9. I have no team though. This is a plunder team game. That's 4 people going for me. Anyway, that's enough of that. That's fine. Like, I don't have to show you the whole match. You can see that it's playable at least. You saw me take some guys out. So basically, I'm sitting for that. I was sitting at about 40.7 mH, 40.74 for that stretch of gameplay. Even if I scroll back up in the this is with NB Miner. It's the only one that seems to work with the 6700 XT properly. And my power consumption is at 119 watts, and it's slightly up because I bumped up the clock speed a bit for the core. The core is normally undervolted to 1155 megahertz, which ends up with an 1115 megahertz game clock. And bumping it up a bit just helps with the FPS stability. So if I show you, I don't know if you can see it on camera properly. So that's what it's going to now, but the game's still running. But if I scroll up a bit, you can see me scrolling up, 40.83, around that, 41. And my base hash rate is 44. So you can see that there, and then you can see the temperatures and settings I'm running at. 78. I'm keeping it fairly cool. This is a very conservative mining settings for an undervolt and efficiency for the low power consumption. So normally I'm at about 115 watts for power consumption, and these are my settings. So the high fan speed, power limit at -6, power consumption's up at 120. The power limit doesn't really seem to affect it that much because it's more for the overall power consumption, but I'm still able to get like a 1700 megahertz game clock by just bumping the voltage and the core frequency up to 1750. So when mining, I actually run it down here like this. I run it at like 1150 and 912 MV, and that gets the power consumption down, but the slightly higher clock speed does help with performance consistency. You could even run it higher. It's not gonna affect your core temps much, and the mining temps are kind of separated from the core. So I could run it I could probably even run it up at base speed, and just for the stretch of gaming, I could run it at, for example, 2650 at 1100 MV, right? But if I do that, I'm basically increasing the power consumption, and then there is a slight temperature increase due to the higher case temperatures and just the cooler, the heatsink, which is also doing the memory, basically just has higher thermal load due to running at that speed, and that has the side effect of increasing the memory temperature. But it's not the memory really working harder, it's just because you're running the same frame rate. And I also tried setting these kind of settings and seeing if I could get the frame rate up at 60, but then your hash rate does basically tank because your GPU is doing more game work, and you want to minimize the game work and just get it playable. So it ends up not a good compromise, actually. So yeah, at these settings, I'll just show you in a second. Like basically at the settings I was running at 975 and 1750 core clock megahertz with the game clock around 1700. At those settings, the FPS is already pretty stable at 30. So running higher, the main thing is you don't want to run higher frame rates because you're going to lose hash rate. But if you try to run like base clock speed, your temperatures will go up, and you still can't uncap the FPS because it won't really improve playability. It might jump up to like 40 or 50, but it just won't be consistent without the FPS cap, and then you end up basically worse off. It's not a good trade, so you're just wasting more power to achieve the same result that you can do at a lower. So this isn't for, obviously this is for my specific GPU, and depending on your GPU, you'll have to find the optimal settings for yours. But it's more of like a proof of concept. Like if you have a 8 gig GPU, you'd be able to find your optimal settings, and it's possible using a 30 FPS cap and minimizing the textures and everything else and the resolution scale that you could get playable performance. So just sharing that with you guys. And now we'll try a different game. So, or maybe we'll play a bit more Warzone. This match isn't over. I believe it's still going. Like I was able to talk for all that. Anyway. But yeah, you can see how it's running. And I did try. Like if I turn everything up, the frame rate doesn't get substantially more consistent. It's already very consistent at these settings. So you can see that that 1% low is on 26, and it basically stays around that, apart from the odd hitch for the DAG rebuilds. I should have got a vehicle. I'll show you the vehicle, like if you can actually drive around and stream the textures smooth enough. And yeah, this is with everything minimum, so. Yeah, you can see it's drivable. Like I can actually go through the map. It's not a big deal. There might be a very minor hitch, but it's mainly the DAG rebuilds that cause the biggest problem. So there we go. I was able to, and you can see it's responsive. Like when I go to do stuff, you don't see me like floundering about. Right, I swear I saw a vehicle, an enemy dropping here. There was someone just like watching me. I knew it. I knew it. Anyway, that's enough of that. I've basically shown you like enough Warzone. And I'll also show you Path of Exile just to have a bit of a variety of a different game. And yeah, the miner was at 40.64 just then. So Path of Exile, it's basically the same thing with Path of Exile. Turn everything down, set an FPS cap to about 30, which is good because the game is, it can actually run optimally at 30, and even under 30 for Path of Exile, it's weird. Warzone runs higher FPS than Path of Exile due to the way the game engine is tuned. So when I do higher end mapping, well, not higher end mapping, but when I do dense mapping with lots of effects going off, my FPS will actually fall down to 17. But that's a game engine issue where even people on really good specs running, running the game without mining, just running it normally, will get low FPS drop if they run too many effects on screen. So that's the game. It's not mining causing that. But I just wanted to show you how playable it is running at these settings. So it's another good thing is with Path of Exile, if you can actually run windowed full screen and set the base resolution down to 800 by 600. But unlike Warzone, which doesn't let you set a low base resolution, you have to use resolution scale. This is setting 800 by 600, but the UI in windowed full screen also remains native. So my UI is still readable. It's not all pixelated. You can see the words on the screen. And that's another, good thing about, I know not all games will be able to do this, but it's a good thing about running borderless and then just using your resolution scale or setting your resolution down is you can keep the native text of your UI, and that is pretty important for enjoyability. So yeah, everything's minimum 800 by 600. You can see it looks fairly pixelated. It might look a bit better on camera because it's a little bit further away compared to native. And the hash rate, I think it runs a little bit higher. It runs at 42.54 mH in this game. And I'll just do a low tier map. I haven't actually beat this map yet. And you can watch the FPS drop, but it still remains smooth and playable for this type of game. Like, it's a different type of game to a first-person shooter. So even if you see the FPS on the 1% dropping to like under 20, it actually doesn't get laggy. Like, I can still flame dash and use my skills quite effectively. You can see me whirlwinding here with all these effects going off. You'll see the, if I can get more density, you'll see the FPS drop eventually when enough mobs and effects start going off. Okay, maybe it won't. The other map I was testing, it was doing it. But yeah, it's very playable. So I can flame dash, I don't get lag. I can do the encounters, I'll do an encounter. That'll help. Restless ground. So this is just a T9 blue map. And this encounter is survival. It's a survival ultimatum. And yeah, the average is at 28. So that's the important one, and just the feel of the gameplay. You can't always go by the 0.1 and 1% lows, depending on the title, because some games behave differently to others, which older gamers will know, that some games, the game engine just won't even feel smooth at 300 FPS or 150 FPS, and then another game can feel perfectly fine at 60 or 40, or even 30 FPS. So I'm doing a fairly intensive encounter now. You can see how many effects are going off from this cast when damage taken. My 1% is down to 17. My actual FPS, which is the bottom number, is 17. Okay, so that's important to be aware of, is even at low FPS, if your frame rate is consistent, which is this bar here that's slowly moving, the reason it's moving slowly is because my frame rate is low. If it was at 60, the bar would be moving faster. So this is basically a frame rate graph. And if I'm getting FPS drops and bad spikes and stutter, you'll see spikes in this graph, and there's no spikes. So basically the frame rate is consistent even though it's low. So blistering cold. Yeah, you can just watch, like, I'm able to kite, I'm able to move the mouse, the character's following it. It's basically no different to running at 60 FPS, doing the same encounter at full graphical detail. I just can't run the high graphical detail because I'm mining. But I just wanted to share that because, yeah, it was a question. I was like wondering, they could have tested that a bit differently. Why haven't they used FPS caps to reduce the, to prevent the GPU doing unnecessary work? I got frozen. And if you use an FPS cap to prevent the unnecessary frames from being rendered, it improves the overall performance. The FPS consistency is going to be much better, and the hash rate won't take as large a hit. So if I alt-tab out and take a look at this now, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but 42.4, and if I scroll up a bit, oh, that was maybe too far. Around 42 is what it was actually getting as of a few minutes ago. 8:37. Oh, there's a clock on the game. 8:37. Just checking the timestamp here. 8:33. That was too early. That was too late. It was around 8, maybe 8:36. Yeah, 8:36. It was getting 42.37 mH. So down from 44. It's like a 2 mega hash hit. I can actually play a game and enjoy it. Apart from the fact I'm distracted to talk. But yeah, it's playable. It's not a laggy mess as you might have been led to believe. But it will depend on the type of gamer. I know there's some gamers that they won't be able to deal with low graphic quality. If you can enjoy a game for the base gameplay and you're not hinged on graphics being part of your enjoyment, then this is very doable. If you want to run high detail graphics, the memory bandwidth usage is just too much and it'll stutter. It'll just be laggy and stuttery if you try to run like native 1080p, for example. 720p you can get away with depending on the GPU. If you're running a much more powerful GPU, you might be fine for 1080p on lowest. But at least on the 6700 XT, I have to turn stuff down. So yeah, that's basically it. I just wanted to show you guys that you can game while mining and not feel super guilty if you just tune your settings a bit. And this also works on the RX 5700. I'm not sure about really low-end GPUs like that just don't have the horsepower to do both, but I could run this undervolted at 1100 megahertz, which was 1115 megahertz game clock, and that should lower that should actually tank the performance down to like a lower GPU level, like a 5500 XT, and it was still playable. So if your card can manage 30 FPS and you just reduce that memory bandwidth usage, even on a weaker GPU, I'm fairly sure it would be possible to get this kind of performance as long as you use Riva Tuner and set an FPS cap to 30. I'll just go to the boss in a minute. I do have a pot for unfreeze, but I used it up in that encounter. So, but this build is missing so many pieces. I'm missing my weapon and offhand that I'm supposed to be using, so I'm currently using Whirlwind Facebreaker. It's got nothing to do with the build I'm supposed to be running. This is just progression gear that I picked up. But yeah, I'm running a fairly intensive build though, like in terms of graphics and FPS drop. This is probably one of the worst builds you could run because those effects are not, they're not efficient and they don't explode everything in a second like Molten Strike builds that have really fast clear. This build's like kind of slower clear, but I can stand there and deal damage if I have to go AFK because of my kids. And that's part of the reason I play builds like this, is because it's not necessarily because I want to do it for the most fun, but because I like to be able to go AFK and come back, and more often than not, my character's not dead. It's just, it's intensive in terms of the effects of those skills. They tend to cause the largest FPS drop. Yeah, if I don't press anything, this is me if I take my hands off it. And I died. Okay, I do need life leech. Fail. I was trying to just show the cast when damage taken, but yeah. I forget this is T9 and I'm supposed to be at T4. I also don't have my heals up for this build yet. There's on my weapon and shield, that's where my survivability is. So right now I have to use Whirlwind to survive for recover. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. I do want to get back to just pure gaming at high quality settings, but this is just dead set honest. I'm not mining with like a mining rig. It's just my gaming / GPU system that I'm using. And the main reason behind it is because here in Philippines, a few dollars in USD per day helps a lot, especially for a family of 4, you know, feeding my kids and stuff. And I always have to make that choice is, do I want to game today and do YouTube? Or do I want to leave it mining and spend time with my kids and stuff and have that extra income, which actually helps our family? And like, I know there's a lot of hate towards people that mine, but if you've got a GPU and you already game on it and you have that choice, can I make money off it, or, you know, or not do it, and just, it's basically free money to make up for the cost of your system and things like that. And a single GPU like this 6700 XT, for example, mining per day makes more than YouTube for me. So, like, how could you blame someone that makes that choice? It's not because they're being greedy and they want to stop other people gaming. It's literally because it is a sacrifice to choose between gaming and making a few extra dollars. So, yeah, if it makes more than YouTube, I can't, you know, I'd be stupid to focus on one thing and give up something else. So I'm kind of doing both at the same time in this video. But I can't do proper videos like I want to. Like, I actually do want to do Cold War. I want to do the Cold War campaign and things like that. But the rate has just been so good for mining lately that I'm making like double what I make from YouTube, basically. So because YouTube is very low income for me. Like, I don't have the resources to set up a nice streaming room with, you know, noise dampening and a nice background and a nice table. It's basically really low spec when it comes to my setup, apart from my system specs, which I've invested into. But I don't have the what's it called? I don't have the disposable income to upgrade my microphone, my table, a nice room. Like, I just don't have it. So I just work with what I got. If I didn't have kids, now then I would be able to do it, but I made a choice to have kids, so I have to live with that. And I love my kids, so we'll do a Maven. So yeah, the video's already done. Hope you got something out of it, and if you want to stay and watch me die, then feel free. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Camera gets sideways. I was also having trouble playing Warzone because I didn't have my headset on, because I was trying to talk and not be distracted by the game sounds. Oh, there was another boss over here. What tier is this? 73, and I'm level 87. I just reset the benchmark tool for those still watching. And for a boss fight, for Maven, it's holding really stable 30 FPS, even on the 1% low. Like, that's a live benchmark counter. Oh, that was it. That was the fight. Really? Cool. So, this is the Maven mechanics. Recursion, Metamorph, Parandus, Delirium, Cluster Jewels. That's what I want. Yes, I want more Delirium. And one more. Sorry, my camera is actually sagging a bit. Couldn't see the clock speeds and everything. Yeah, you can see the memory junction too, like it's all pretty good. Like I thought I would get higher temps and due to the, the split load of the card, but apparently that's not a big deal. I had to reset the FPS counter. There was a FPS drop on the 1% just from changing maps. But actually staying in the instance, it's fine. And this is solo self-found, for anyone wondering why I'm not running a really good build already. I can't trade anyone if it's solo. Self-found mode. Oh, what's that? Guardian Jewel. Growing Agony. Viper Strike. Oh, that's cool. Blighted chests in areas have 100% more chance to contain blighted maps. Blighted map found in areas are anointed. Cool. Sorry, I haven't played with these mechanics before because I skipped a few seasons. So you can see the transition. The 0.1 dropped to 5 FPS, but it wasn't from actual gameplay. So there we go. See you in the next video, guys. Bye-bye.